On today's show, the NBA draft is less than 2 months away. We have our first kind of pre-lottery look at the board for the Atlanta Hawks. We'll get into all of that with Brian Schroeder on part 1 of 2 right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1963 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday here at the end of April. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. I also want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to this podcast anywhere you find your podcast. That includes YouTube on the video side, plus Apple, Spotify, Overcast, etc. on the audio side. And please take a second to spread the word about this podcast to your friends and family. And today's show will be a two-parter, actually. This is part 1 of 2 with myself and Brian Schroeder, a frequent guest of the podcast, talking about all things NBA draft. Brian covers the draft year-round, and kind of a broad look on this show. Pre-lottery, the lottery's not for a couple weeks still, but kind of looking at who's going to be around, maybe in the same range as the Hawks. The Hawks are probably going to have 2 picks in the first 22 of the draft, so a little bit of an interesting range. We'll get into that. Some of the archetypes, forwards, some bigs, some guards, the whole gamut, kind of a broad look on purpose. Then we'll kind of be diving in with some more depth into the draft prospects as time goes on before the draft arrives in late June. But with all that said, here we go with part 1 of 2 with myself and Brian Schroeder. And by the way, stay tuned. Part 2 should be available in the same podcast feed when part 1 is over. Here we go with myself and Brian. I am joined once again by my friend Brian Schroeder for the first post-college season, almost post-international season, pre-lottery, whatever this is going to be. Hello, sir. How are you?
We're talking about the 2026 draft today, right? That's what I'm
I know you want to. I know that everybody, the sickos have already moved on to next year. That's what always happens this time of year. But no.
To be honest, I say this all the time. I'm pretty much done by early March with like what I would call primary scouting, and now it's just waiting. We're recording this right before the withdrawal deadline, so we have I'd say we know 95% of the guys who will be in this draft. But now it's just sorting and you take a little bit of work from you do take input on the combine, the scrimmages, especially for like seniors. Those are the guys who get like the Ben Shepherds who stand out, or the Dubs. But we're basically done with this draft. I have been for a few weeks now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you don't want covering one team on this show like we do. It's like hard to do too much draft till the season's over on the podcast, especially with a team that was not tanking, and back in the years, you remember
wasn't like an established,
didn't know whether to pick him and
for the Hawks to pick.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, back when you remember this, you were coming on the show then too. Like back when the Hawks were really tanking and rebuilding, it was like the storyline all season long. But once you're a team that's like at least competitive, and they don't have their own pick, it's like all right, kind of this dance. But here we are. Everyone listening to this show probably knows this. The Hawks are very likely to have the 13th or 14th pick, and then the 22nd pick is for sure going to be their pick. We will not know about the lottery pick until the lottery, which is like 2 weeks for people. When people listen to this podcast, it's May 12th. That's a whole Kings pick thing I've talked about a million times. But for purposes of this show, we're going to act like the Hawks have the 13th or 14th pick because it's so likely to happen. But it's not guaranteed, everybody. I'm big on the math, and I will tell you it is not guaranteed to happen. So keep that in mind. But this is the one thing I actually prepped you for before we start recording. Everything else is off the cuff, but I was going to ask you this for Hawks fan reasons, really. And to kind of establish like how wide the range is. Because, I've been saying for a while, if they have these 2 picks, 10 picks apart, basically, the range of that is pretty big. It's not 10 players. Like you're talking about probably 25, 30 guys that could conceivably fall. So the way I'll ask you this is to kind of just narrow down our window a little bit here. How many players in this class at the top of it exist where you'd be surprised or really surprised if they actually fell to 13 without a trade up? Now, obviously, trade up's different. The Hawks could certainly do that. In fact, I'm sure you won't be surprised by this. As soon as the Hawks were supposed to get kind of locked into that, everyone's like, what does 13 and 22 get us in a trade up? That's the first question that I get from everybody, right? But ignoring that for a minute, how many guys like would it really surprise you if they actually fell to 13?
I'm looking at it right now. I'm getting my final. I'd say there's 8 guys that I'd be pretty surprised if they were available at 13. And it's 8 of my top 9.
Yeah.
Flag and Harper, Derek Queen, VJ Edgecombe, Jeremiah Fears, Con Knipple, Ace Bailey, and Colin Murray-Boyles.
That sounds.
Those are the guys that I'd be surprised. And then there's guys like for specific fits. Like there's a couple guys I don't think will get past Portland. Maybe a guy like a Seng would be surprising because I feel like the teams that like him would be really in on him. But yeah, there's a good group of guys who I think could easily be there, and they all there's different archetypes they fit that I think are interesting. We could talk about.
The only guy you didn't name there that's like in the consensus like top 7 or 8 is Trey Johnson from Texas. Mixed reports, like I've heard people that really like him and people that really don't. I don't know which one is going to weigh out in the end. Is that why? Like he could see?
Yeah, he's 11. He's 11 for me. Those other guys are all in the top 10. I feel like saying that my 11th guy being available at 13 or 14 would be surprising is kind of silly. Like
right. No, the range is always wider than people think. Like there's been. I've been trying not to like cross people off too much beyond the obvious Flag, Harper, etc. But still, there are realistic or not realistic situations. Like I don't think you're going to sit there at 13 and get Mallock's obviously very popular in some circles with Hawks fans because he's a 7-footer, and I say that kind of tongue in cheek because there's always people that want a 7-footer on the roster. He's really the only one, and so he's being circled in a lot of ways. But I think it would almost certainly take a trade up.
High ceiling guys like Queen, Edgecombe, Malawach, Ace Bailey, just not going to make it to 13. This is not like an all-time great draft. It's a good draft.
Yeah.
But like those guys, and even the guy like Fears, although there would be no reason for the Hawks to take him.
Well, unless they were going to trade Trey, it would be the only reason why they might do that. But I'm not.
Yeah.
Not expecting that.
But yeah, even a guy like Knipple, I think is just going to be he's going to do too well in interviews, do too well testing. He's a good athlete. He won't make it there. And then Malawach, Bailey, those guys are just too. I had it 8 and 9, but those guys are just such high ceiling players that like they're not going to make it that far.
Yeah, and look, a lot can.
That's why it's called the lottery.
Yeah, I mean the lottery happens. A lot can change. The combine doesn't impact these guys as much usually because they don't.
No, most of them don't test. Yeah,
they won't do everything. If they do, they show up and they'll measure, and might be it. So it's weird because especially I say this with love. You're a sicko like I am, even more so than I am about this stuff. The Hawks don't currently have a 2nd round pick. Like they could get one. It's not hard to get one. You could trade for one or whatever, but they don't currently have a deep pick. Yeah, I mean they bought picks in the recent past, so they could do that. But it's like hard to talk too much about. We'll do probably a little bit about that later in the cycle. But right now it's like, all right, they're probably going to have. Well, they're definitely going to have 22, and they're probably going to have 13 or 14, and that's kind of it. So it's interesting. Last year, I mean, you'll notice you came on the show. People listen to the podcast. Pre-lottery, you and I were having a whole different discussion, and then the Hawks had a 3% chance to win the lottery, and they won the lottery, and it changed the whole thing. So things could change. This year, there's no upside for the Hawks. If the Kings win the lottery, that pick is going to go away, not come to the Hawks.
Yeah.
But it is it's actually weird to be this kind of locked in, even with a top 14 pick, because it's either you have it or you don't. There's no flexibility. I don't know. Interesting class. You mentioned that it's a good class, not a great one.
It should make your scouting assignments much easier if you work for the team.
Yeah, I mean, I've been poking around for a while, not only in the Hawks, but just in general, because, what the last, month of the season, it was like, all right, the Kings pick comes, it's going to be between 13 and 16. It was kind of like going to be right that range, and the Lakers pick was going to be somewhere in the 20s. You have a decent idea of it. This was brought to you by Monarch Money. I think I've all done this before, but at times in the past, I look at my bank account and found out where my money go. It's like a baffling experience, but between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track sometimes about where your money actually is, and that's where Monarch Money happens to come in. Monarch Money is your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's instead a complete financial command center for you. You track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place, so you actually just stop managing your money and start building wealth instead. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized how much just spending on food, for instance. It's just one example, but now I budget smarter and save more on a regular basis. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you actually combine them all together with Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals. And if you want to manage your money in tandem with your partner as well, it can be smoother than ever at Monarch Money. You can track shared accounts, personal accounts as well, set goals, and even stay on the same page without all of the stress. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA with monarchmoney.com. 50% off your first year with Monarch Money. One more time, that is monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. I want to ask you one thing about the class in general, because you mentioned it, of like good, not great necessarily, or historically great.
My friend of the show, Caleb Houston, just now. I've got Celtics Magic on in the background.
Yeah, I did mention when the Hawks were playing the Magic in the play-in that there were like so many Michigan guys just everywhere on those two rosters, including Caleb Houston. But yeah, last year we talked about it forever, like how it was not a good class. Basically, that was the theme of the whole thing, of the whole discussion.
Unsurprisingly, it turned out to not be a very good class.
Yeah, especially at the top. And like, I still maintain that like a lot of last year's class is like fairly normal. It's just the top was really bad.
Yeah.
What is this year like?
Say that like really bad is so like Ricochet and Sarr both had good seasons. Like they're probably both going to be on, if not first team all rookie, they'll be on the all rookie teams. They were good, but it's not just two guys. It's like the first like 7-8. It's just like Reed Shepherd. He's good. He's barely played. Like it's just not a class that has had an immediate impact in the way that some classes do. A lot of role players and a lot of guys who physically weren't ready to play NBA basketball, like Bob Carrington. And then I'm pretty sure there were 6 or 7 guys who had better VORP in their one season in 2023, which is not good. That's not a good result.
No,
let's just see it real quick, just to prove the point. Edey and Khalil Ware were the 2 VORP leaders. Klingon, Filipowski, Quentin Post, Jared McCain, Cam Spencer. That's everyone who had like a notable positive impact for their teams. Only 4 of those guys played 1,000 minutes. And then you have Shepard, Connect, AJ Mitchell, who were positive. So 10 guys with positive VORP. Only 5 of them played 1,000 minutes. That's bad. It's quite bad. And then, Cam Spencer and Jared McCain are the only players with positive BPM who played more than Bobby Clinton played 42 minutes. I'm not counting that.
No,
that's bad.
Even Cam Spencer didn't play that much. He was
252 minutes.
Yeah,
really the only vaguely starter level players were the 4 bigs. Were the 4 non-star bigs, Ware, Klingon, Edey, and Eve Missy. And then Sarr, I think, really started coming on. Then Bazelis came on. You had Ricochet was fine. Ryan Dunn had a really strong start, then kind of fall off. Castle had a solid year. Rob Dillingham barely played. Jacoby Walter was fine. And it'll look a little better when guys like Deron Holmes and Topic come back and maybe hopefully play. But it's still a solidly below average. Like there's not. I don't know where the All NBA guys are in this class. That's the real thing.
So on this
AB Sarr in 4 or 5 years, that's the only guy that looks like it to me, which is why I had him 1.
Yeah. So on this 25 class, especially with regard to the Hawks range, which is that 13 to 22, is that normal? Like, is that a strength of this class? Is it a weakness of this class? Like, there's always a little bit of tiers that people prefer where classes line up. What do you make of the middle of the first round?
My second tier, which to me is lottery talent, goes out to 19, I think. So it's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty wide. I would say my 1 and 2 tiers are probably different than. I think a lot of people would consider a second tier to be like an RJ Barrett type prospect. Like this guy could be an all-star maybe. To me, that's one. I have broad tiers. I think I'm kind of known for that. So for me, a 2-tier guy is like starter. Like this is a guy I've taken the lottery and expect he could probably start for me at some point. And I think this is a wider than normal class, but I do think the weakness of it is that it has the 2 pretty obvious star players, and then the other all-star guys are all like the guys who could maybe make an all-star team are all kind of conditional, or like guys like Malawatch, where like there's like maybe the variance on the second level guys I think is higher than normal, but I think that also it makes it kind of an exciting class, and also makes it one thing that really helps it is a lot of guards. A lot of those guys are guards, which the NBA needs. The NBA needs just starting level young guards. There's not a lot of them. Like I mean, I think in the last like 5 drafts, I think Emmanuel quickly would be a top 10 guard taken, and like nothing against him. That's not. You're not getting like a lot of all-star talents in the last like 4 drafts, like at the guard spots.
Yeah, it's been a weakness. And, for the Hawks, I've been saying this, but like the board is pretty open. We already referenced Jeremiah Fears is like, it's kind of like a number one, he'll probably be gone. Number 2, he's kind of like a, if Trey isn't on the team anymore, pick, and otherwise it doesn't make sense. But almost everybody else that's in the top, however many picks could theoretically make sense for the Hawks. So they're kind of an open book because they don't have one glaring need. Like as fans would always like to point out with this Hawks team, their starting 5, their core 5 guys is a starting lineup. If you want to just form it that way, it's Trey, Dyson, Risha Shea, Jalen Johnson, and Okongwu, and that's 5 guys who can play together on the court. So like they don't have that one positional weakness unless you're someone who thinks they have to have a 7-footer, all these things. So anyway, it just leads to like a lot of wide openness, and there's always preferences that I'm going to have of like what I would want. The Hawks could use some more size, generally speaking, when it comes to like even the forward line would be good. They could draft a big. They still could take a pick in this class. They could do that. Maybe more shooting, familiar needs that a lot of teams need. But they're not like there are some teams, this, Brian. Like it's probably not the greatest idea to think about it this way. But there are teams where it's like they need to do exactly this. Like they have one glaring weakness. It's like they're going to take the one. The Hawks don't really have that.
The Spurs last season.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, hey, the Spurs have to draft a guard of some kind because they just don't have one for the future. Yeah. The Hawks don't have that problem, and there's some freedom in that. There's also some interesting, like, it makes life a little bit harder in some ways, and more for me, it's more interesting to be like, you know what? Which players do I like? It's got less to do with like archetype than it is like who do I buy as an NBA player. And the way you put it earlier is actually really great, and I appreciate it. Is like it's easier to sell at 13 than it would have been at like 5. But like if you get a starter, and I mean starter the way that you bet, like a solid, like permanent starter in the anywhere besides like number 1 or number 2, basically, you've done well, generally speaking, in the NBA draft. And people don't think about it that way, which I understand why. But at 13 and 22, if the Hawks get one starter between those 2 picks, they've done well. That's not going to be popular to say that out loud, but does that sound like reasonable to you as someone who studies this stuff very closely?
Yeah, and I think I mean, let's just say the draft goes exactly how my board is. You would hopefully get one starter out of that group, and then the guy at 22 is like, oh, maybe he'll be something.
Either a flyer, like a high upside flyer, or like a more rotation-y, low ceiling guy. Like you can kind of go either way on that, obviously. Yeah. But there's some freedom. For instance, like you don't have to do it this way, but if you took a quote unquote safer pick at 13, you might want to take a bigger swing at 22. You don't have to do that way.
Although I'm also of the opinion. Now it's NFL draft time. I always enjoy it when an NFL team, let's say, has a big gap in the defensive backs room, and they take 2 or even 3 defensive backs, because too often, I think with the NBA, especially when it's like a broad need like shooting, let's say the Hawks took, let's say Concanipple was there at 13 and they took Concanipple, and the fans are just like, we don't need any more shooting. It's like, no. You can do it again. You
can't have too much shooting as a general rule. That's
the only. This is why wings are so important in the NBA and why they're so valued in the draft. I would definitely say like we need a 7-footer and you took Malawat. I wouldn't like. Well, you should also take Ryan.
Yeah, you probably don't want 2 of those. Yeah, I'm with you on that. But generally, and that's the thing about all of this. I don't mean to pick. There's nothing wrong with this, but I think when you get a situation where you have you've seen this. Fans and people, they like to just post the 5-player lineup, and it's like, this is our lineup now. And it's like, well, yeah, that you can still draft a small forward even though you have Risha Shea on the team. Like they can play together. That's part of the reason about how important wings and forwards are, is that they can generally play together, and you want to have those guys, especially when you're built
generally the best lineups, like. Not really counting the Celtics last year because they had Drew, and Drew is kind of a skeleton key for weird lineups.
Yeah.
The best lineups for most teams, like let's say the Thunder's best lineup is 1 guard, Shea, who is kind of a hybrid anyway, and then it's like Caruso, Jalen Williams, Dort, Chet Holmgren or Hartenstein. And it's like 2, 3, and 4. Those guys are all like fours technically. Like, there's not really. Generally, a team's best lineup is 3 wings, a center of some kind, or like a big wing, like a 4.
Yeah, you do need some physicality, which is like OKC has. Like you don't want necessarily 3 skinny, smaller wings. You need some physicality. It's not necessarily have to be height related. Like
you can't have 3 Isaiah Joes out there.
Yeah, I mean, you use Drew as the example. Like Drew is
spacing now.
He's a tank, Like you have to have some physicality. But yeah, you're right. It's not like, and yeah, there are more 2 big lineups being used in the last couple of years than there were in the previous few years before that. It's a good thing to have at your arsenal. Like, but I think just generally speaking, the lineup versatility and just adding, like if you just took all the names away and said, all right, Brad, what would you like to have the Hawks add to this team at 13 and 22 realistically? And it's like, you know what? If at least one of those picks is like a big forward, I don't know who that player is right now, but like I'd love to take a swing on a forward. And yeah, I know they already have Jalen and Ricochet. I get it, but you need another one. We saw that this year. As soon as Jalen goes down, they had no plan B. Like
also as much as I was a big Jalen believer, and you can attest to that, his health is not great.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of been fluky, but yeah, it was 2 years in a row he hasn't finished the season, so it's like notable if nothing else. So I mean, we'll talk about some players, but I think it's just interesting to think about the range they are in, trying to be realistic, but also, I mean, I trust your board, especially compared to mine right now. With I am not done with all my prep. I'm way behind. But if you think there are 19 starting level players in this class, decent chance you come up with 2 of those guys, even. You know what I mean? At 13 and 20.
I'm looking at my board right now. Number 19, I'm less sure.
So 18, whatever you want to say it is. But you know how it is. Like by the time we get to the draft, there'll be some player that rises in the process out of not nowhere, but like out of nowhere compared to where they probably should have been. There'll be an international guy that comes on late. There's always like these examples of archetypes that happen at the end of the process. Toolsy guy, whatever it is. And by the way, it only takes one. It's famous, but it's also true. It only takes one team to take anybody. Papagiannis was a lottery pick. My favorite example is Papagiannis, but there are many of those. Jerome Robinson was a lottery pick. That happened in real life. I watched it with my own eyes.
Pick 22nd.
Oh, Lord of mercy. Today's show is brought to you by WayFair. Spring is here, and that means it's home project season for a lot of us. Whether you're refreshing a room in your house, tackling a full renovation perhaps, WayFair is the best kept secret for all things home improvement. From small updates to like stylish cabinet hardware to major upgrades like new vanities or new sinks or outdoor lighting, etc. At WayFair, they have the quality products for every single budget. I've been looking into some new furniture for my setup at home, and with WayFair, the selection is really, honestly incredible. And they have this fast and free shipping feature that makes everything really easy for you. No hauling heavy items from the store to your place. And I also love that they have top brands like GE and Moen at great prices. And you can shop in, honestly, seamless fashion at WayFair. I can find exactly what I want and what I need to fit in my space and in my style. WayFair makes home improvement easy. Get started right now at wayfair.com. That's WayFair. That's WAYFAIR. Wayfair.com. WayFair, every style, every home. Okay, I'm going to ask you this now, and we'll go with some players here. Putting aside the eight-ish guys you don't think will be available with the Hawks pick, do you have a personal favorite outside of that group? You know what the Hawks look like. I mean, you watch the league. Do you have a personal favorite, not only just player, but like potential add to the Hawks, like dream scenario at 13 within reason?
So I think there's a difference for what I would want and what I think the Hawks would want, because I think the Hawks would want to sing. Noah Singh. I mean, that would be 6'9" guy. He's honestly going to play himself in the top 10. A Sang or Carter Bryant. I think
just for people that don't know this, by the way, just like a Sang is, I think he's still 18, right? Played at home this year.
He's like a week older than Flag.
Yeah, so really like an upside swingy forward, big forward though. What, 6'10"-ish, right?
At least 6'8".
6'8", 6'9", 6'10", skinny, but an interesting upside swing. And you said Carter Bryant from Arizona.
Yeah.
By the way, again, one of these guys has not declared yet as we're talking.
Yeah.
We think he's going to, but he has not yet. Just noting that.
To kind of highlight your point, another forward, a guy who can shoot, a guy who can attack closeouts, play defense, rotate, above average athletes. Bryant is really interesting to me because he's a little Keegan Murray-ish to me, in that I don't know if I was to grade out all of his skills, which I don't really believe in doing. Like I've tried it before, and it always just doesn't feel correct. Like I'll have a guy that I don't like very much will have a high score, and a guy I love who has more jagged edges will have a lower score. But I've done it before. Let's say if I had to take 10 attributes and give Carter Bryant a score out of 5, he'd be a 3 out of 5 in just about everything. Which for a guy like Keegan Murray, and I think I'm a little bit justified in this, I didn't like him at like 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
But like, he's a competent NBA player. Like he's a solid. If he's not a starter, he's a really good. He's a Harrison Barnes type. Like, yeah, he's good. Shoots threes.
I mean, yeah, he's the kind of guy that every team would take. 6'8" forward who can do.
So a guy like that at 13 would be great. Like really, and Carter Bryant there, I think would be pretty good. I think it's just like a safe-ish. He's 6'8", 215, 220. I think he's got a 7-foot wingspan. Good spot-up shooter, play good defense. Like, there's almost no way he's not a decent NBA player. And so I feel like that really would be a good, solid pick. I'm looking really foggy now.
It's all right.
But I think Aseng's maybe a little more of an upside guy because he's been really productive at all in the last, 3 months. Because he was coming into the year, Ben Saraf was sort of the marquee prospect for them. And he still might be a first-round pick. He's a good prospect. I'm not a huge fan, but I see the intrigue.
Big guard. Yeah.
Yeah, and Aseng has just, absolutely cleared him. To the extent that I think he's probably going to be a top 10 pick now. But a guy like that, I think, would be the Hawks' best option from their perspective.
Yeah, I can see them definitely doing that. There is, just to acknowledge it, there is some level of uncertainty with the Hawks front office. They just fired their GM. Most of those guys were there last year and in the process. But we don't know if they're going to hire somebody that might change the whole calculus. We just don't know. Just acknowledging that on this podcast. A guy I want to ask you about that's kind of not in positionally is kind of the same, but not the same kind of player is Collin Murray-Boyles, a personal favorite of mine. I enjoy him quite a bit. But an interesting fit kind of player.
Like boss of the SEC.
Say again?
He was the final boss of the SEC this year.
Oh yeah, I mean he was great. Obviously the team was not very good, but it was not his fault at all. He was tremendous. But listed at he's 6'8", 6'9", 250. I
think he's officially listed 6'7", 245, 7'2" wingspan, which is
sure
weird.
Yeah, I mean, I believe you threw around a Paul Millsap comparison, which means I have to say that out loud. This podcast. Yeah. I mean, that's obviously dream stuff for the Hawks. I'm not saying he's going to be that, but that'd be interesting. But an interesting kind of quirky player, and but certainly very physical. Lots of traits that you like. Also, isn't a supernatural fit everywhere. I don't think he and Jalen Johnson are the best fit together, for example. But I also really like Collin Murray-Boyles. So what do you make of him in this late lottery range?
I think I would hope for them. I would probably. I mean, 13. He could. I think he's probably going to be a starter, which is why he's in my tier 2. So I don't think it'd be a bad pick. But I think he might want to go with a little more a dynamic shooter at that spot, and then. If he's at 22, he slides. Take him immediately because 22 is Brandon Clark area, and that's is a very different player, physically. But I think that's sort of the impact you can look for from him, of a mismatch guy off the bench. Because CMB is one of the better touch finishers in the paint in the last half decade of the NBA prospects. He's just an awesome. He scores 2 feet in the paint. He scores on anybody. He dunks over people. Just has has that touch, has that ability to finish, that ability to carve out space. Awesome garbage guy. He's almost the Millsap comp I like. The other one I kind of like. I like Trevor Booker was one. Look at my comp sheet out, which is on Patreon.com.
Well, that's the left hand. They share the lefty thing as well with Booker.
Yeah, because I found some good guys for Collin Murray-Boyles that I think fit him. Yeah, Jase Richardson, PJ Washington, Grant Williams, Montrezl Harrell, Patrick Patterson, Trevor Booker, Paul Millsap, Chuck Hayes, Reggie Evans, David West, Jarris Walker.
And that's a mixed bag of people.
Yeah. But
you can kind of see it, though. And I mean, not to go way down the road with the Millsap comparison, but Murray-Boyles' big question is, can he shoot, right? To some degree. And Paul couldn't shoot for a long time, and then he figured out how to shoot. Not at an elite level, but at a level that was enough to unlock a lot of other stuff, and became an all-star because he unlocked that level. That wasn't the reason why.
It's NFL draft season. The biggest attribute I think that Colin and Paul Millsap and Trevor Booker and even Patrick Patterson share is that when they get their hands on something, they have like offensive lineman hands where it's like,
yeah.
Millsap was not a guy who boxed out that much. He would just put his hand on somebody and stop them. And like, you're not getting his rebound. And
steals and all the things that he was able to do with those same hands. Yeah. The habit creation that he was able to do.
Murray-Boyles is definitely like that because he got matched up against a lot of, he might got matched up with guys on Florida. If you watched the tournament, the Florida guys, the Auburn guys, Alabama had some bigs. He got matched up against all centers most of the year and physically was fine. Like, just got him. He DeJuan Blaired a lot. He had a lot of DeJuan Blair possessions where he just got underneath the big guy and just boxed him out. Like, he just wasn't getting a rebound. If he had any other teammates, he probably would have even had a higher offensive rebound rate than he did, but he didn't.
Yeah. So I really like him. I don't know if he's a Hawks guy or not. Honestly, I don't have a great feel for that, but I really like him personally. And the defense would be immediately really helpful for a team that's trying to build defense. And they did a good job of that this year. They got a lot better defensively, and he'd be another.
He just controls the paint on goal. Like, he's just a paint presence. Like, he eats up space. He bumps everybody. He deflects everything. He's got like crazy reach, crazy IQ is the word I hate to use, but his instinct, like his ability to read plays and shoot gaps, is really high level.
Oh, I do think this as well. If the Hawks, and we saw it late in the year, I don't want to overreact to it, but if the Hawks believe in the Okongwu shooting development that is starting to come, it seems like he's the kind of guy that you can play a lot easier if your center can shoot, and the Hawks believe that. Murray-Boyles is even more appealing to me. Because of that's like ideally he'd be paired with a shooting center, and if the Okongwu looks like he could be that at this point, like I don't want to overstate again. It was only a small sample of like really being that, but he was really showing it at the end of the year.
25? He just turned 25.
24.
Yeah, he just turned 24.
Yeah, 24.
Yeah. That's Al Horford wasn't shooting threes when he was 24. So
no, and Okongwu, like, it's looking like he's letting it fly. I don't want to. It's not going to Okongwu podcast, but like. It turned into
Oh,
I know, but it turned into basically like it was we're going to make him shoot this year, and he was taking 1 or 2 a game, and by the end of the year, it was like he was taking 6 or 7 in some games, and like hunting them, and I'm like, oh, this is a real thing now. He's like actually shooting at a high level, and again, if that's real, it just opens up some possibilities. Like pairing him with a 4 who can rebound the way that Murray-Boyles can, for instance. Obviously, Jalen can do all this stuff too, but as for another guy in the front court to kind of do that.
A different kind of rebounder, though. I don't know.
Different kind of player. But Jalen averaged 10 rebounds again this year. Like, he's a real.
He's a grab and go rebounder.
He is.
I am more athletic than you rebounder, whereas Colin Murray-Boyles is I am stronger and smarter than you kind of rebounder.
And both can work. I'll sign up for both those guys.
They work well together, honestly. Thinking of like Roy Hibbert and David West and like Paul George flying around.
But while we're on this topic, he's not. I get questions a lot about Asa Newell because he played at Georgia down the street. He is definitely more of a big than some of the other guys we just talked about. But what do you think? What do you think of Asa Newell in general? Because there's kind of a big. I've asked around about him a lot, and it's like people are not really sure what to make of him.
If Capella gets moved, there's absolutely a slot for him because he's just a good. Let's see. Nick Claxton was one of the guys I had on his. Hakeem Warwick. Like those guys who are kind of more 4s than 5s, but
Hakeem Warwick. Wow.
Hakeem Warwick. I love Hakeem Warwick.
I know.
Let me look. I had a whole group. I don't know why I closed the comp sheet off like we were done.
It's fine.
Asa, where are you?
But I did, while you're looking that up, I did see you referred to him as an elite level garbage man in your in one of your write-ups.
Oh, I have a Congo on here. Claxton, Paul Reed, Taj Gibson, Hakeem Warwick, Brian Grant, AC Green, John Henson, Jared Jeffries, Purvis Ellison, Chris Wilcox. So that kind of
just combo bigs, basically. Like that's what that is. And again, like,
rebounder.
In their area, like I think Asa Newell will be totally fine. I'm not in love with him, but there's some stuff to like. Like he's a really good athlete. Like, I see a lot of stuff I like. I also don't think he's a full-time center. but I also think he's a full-time 4. He's like an interesting,
which is where I think the Claxton thing really comes from for me. They have almost the same build. They have almost the same measurements. Very similar. I mean, they played at the same school. I think he's going to test pretty similar to Claxton, and that's sort of the player you're getting is like with maybe a little bit less. I think he's a little bit more polished perimeter game than Claxton did at this point, which is good.
Yeah, you want that.
And I think that's the archetype the player archetype you're really looking at. It's just a switch. I call them switch bigs.
Yeah,
this guy covers pick and rolls. This guy runs the rim. I mean, the ideal version of that guy is like a Lively who's 7'2", and a lot of these guys are 6'10", and Newell's probably 6'10 and a half, 6'11". But yeah, he might be at 13 for me. So he is in fact my 13th player on my big board.
Yeah,
so, that wouldn't be a bad pick.
I think if the Hawks, and this is more philosophical, but if they don't, I think they do probably want a bigger backup center. Capela's a free agent; he'll probably leave.
Yeah.
But if they don't do that, you can make an argument that loading up on a couple of these 6'10", 6'11" combo bigs, like your Mo Gaze, like your Ace Newell kind of type, might be a way to get by more with Okongwu as the primary 32-minute a game center. If you can play him with size all the time next to him, it actually is kind of appealing if you can figure out a way to do that offensively and not make it too clunky and have enough skill level, which I think all these guys, Mo Gay is probably the biggest question of all of them, but they already have Mo Gay, so there's that. But Newell's got enough offensive juice maybe to make that work next to a center.
Yeah, and I think your issue with trying to focus on backup center in this draft is if you're looking for size, is let's see in my top.
I've been saying it the whole time. Go ahead.
Milo is the only actual 7-footer.
I know. I've been saying it the entire time. It's funny because there's always, and I hope and pray Okongwu's play the last 3 months quieted some of this stuff down. But I know it didn't in some circles. But I'm guys, Malawak's the only one that's the kind of center you're talking about. Even Derek Queen, who's going to be gone, we acknowledge that. But Derek Queen is
6'9.5".
He's
not
that big.
That's not tall.
Thomas Sorber, these guys are all not monster size big, all monster size centers. Sorber, Newell, who else are we not even named? I don't know. There's a couple more of these guys. Danny Wolf's not even a center. Danny Wolf's a 7. I know he's 7 feet tall, but he's he's
the world's tallest shooting guard.
Right, he's a hybrid big, if that. So there are not 7.
The other guys you mean Broom, Johan Berenger.
Sure. Yeah. Kalkbrenner is the only other one, but he's further down. Kalkbrenner is a backup center type. 25. Yeah. Yeah. And I like him, by the way, as a backup center. In the NBA, I think he'll be a backup center, and that'll be a perfectly fine archetype.
You're not drafting a backup center at 13.
No. Maybe at 22, it's not totally insane, but I still wouldn't
that'd be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
You can take Kalkbrenner there, but Berenger at 22 would be fine.
Sure. So there are names there to talk about, but I do find it ironic. This particular class it has a lot of bigs in it, but they're all more of the hybrid guys.
Yeah. Like I said, Berenger, by the way, is 6'10" to 30. He's that same size.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. All right, that is all for part 1 of 2 with myself and Brian Schroeder talking all things NBA draft in advance of the lottery here at the end of April. Part 2 is available right now in this same podcast feed, so watch or listen on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple, etc. Please stay tuned. Please subscribe to this podcast. Follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, part 2 available right now, and we'll see you all next time.